The city was drowning in darkness, the rain hammering against the empty streets as a lone taxi idled beneath a flickering street lamp. Inside, the driver's fingers gripped the wheel tightly, his breath uneven, his heart pounding. He wasn't alone. At least, he thought he wasn't. The passenger had entered the car without a word, their presence heavy, unsettling. But when he glanced at the rearview mirror, the seat was empty. His skin prickled as a whisper brushed against his ear, a voice that didn't belong to anyone or anything. Later, the CCTV footage would confirm the worst. He had been alone the entire time. Or had he? The rain poured down relentlessly, hammering the asphalt roads of New York City. The streets glistened under the flickering glow of streetlights, creating distorted reflections of neon signs and passing cars. Inside a battered yellow taxi, Mark Evans drummed his fingers against the steering wheel, yawning. It was past midnight, prime hours for strange encounters. Mark had been a taxi driver for nearly a decade, and in that time, he had seen it all. Drunks passed out in the back seat, couples arguing, businessmen making shady deals over the phone. But nothing could have prepared him for the passenger he was about to pick up. A notification beeped on his dashboard screen. A new ride request had come through. The pickup location was an old district on the city's outskirts, a place Mark usually avoided. It was home to crumbling buildings, flickering street lamps, and an eerie silence that settled in after dark, but the fare was unusually high. He hesitated for a moment before sighing. All right, let's make this quick. Mark took a sharp turn and headed toward the pickup location. The rain made visibility difficult, and the wipers screeched as they struggled against the downpour. As he neared the destination, the familiar hum of the city faded. The buildings were old, their windows either broken or boarded up. A single streetlight flickered at the corner, barely illuminating the figure standing beneath it. The passenger was a man dressed in a dark suit, his posture unnaturally rigid. His face was obscured by the shadow of a fedora hat. But what unsettled Mark was the absolute stillness of the man. He didn't shuffle his feet or check his phone. He simply stood there waiting. Mark pulled up beside him and rolled down the window slightly. "You call a ride?" The man nodded once. Without a word, he opened the door and slid into the back seat. Mark glanced at him through the rearview mirror. His passenger's face was pale, almost sickly, and his eyes, dark and sunken, reflected nothing. Mark suppressed a shiver. Where to? A long pause. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, the man spoke. "Riverside Cemetery." Mark frowned. That was on the far side of town, a place no one willingly went to at this hour. You sure? That's... drive. Something about the way the man said it sent a chill down Mark's spine. He cleared his throat and shifted into gear. As the taxi rolled through the rain-soaked streets, an uneasy silence settled between them. Mark tried to shake the discomfort by turning on the radio, but only static came through. He switched it off, the quiet inside the car now deafening. He stole another glance at the mirror. The passenger sat perfectly still, hands folded on his lap. No movement, no sound, just an unsettling presence that made Mark's skin crawl. After 20 minutes, they reached a stretch of road leading to Riverside Cemetery. The area was even darker than the city outskirts, with only the dim glow of the occasional streetlight guiding the way. The rain had turned into a soft drizzle, casting an eerie mist over the landscape. Mark swallowed hard. All right, we're almost. The back seat was empty. Mark's breath hitched. His hands tightened around the steering wheel as his heart pounded in his chest. He hadn't stopped. He hadn't heard the door open. Yet the passenger was gone. A chill crept down his spine as he glanced around. The only sound was the soft patter of rain against the windshield. Then, from the radio, a voice crackled through the static. "You should not have come." Mark's blood ran cold. His reflection in the rearview mirror was no longer alone. A dark figure sat in the back seat, staring at him. And then, everything went black. Chapter 2. The passenger from beyond Mark jolted awake with a sharp pain in his temple. His breath came in ragged gasps, his fingers gripping the steering wheel so tightly, his knuckles turned white. The rain still drummed against the windshield, but that wasn't what sent chills down his spine. It was the silence. The man was gone. The eerie passenger, the one with hollow eyes and a voice like a whisper from the grave, was no longer in the back seat. But Mark couldn't remember anything. He didn't recall stopping the car. He didn't remember opening the door, and he certainly didn't remember blacking out. His throat felt dry as he glanced at the rearview mirror. Nothing. "Shit," he muttered, his heart hammering against his ribs. "Maybe I'm just exhausted. Maybe it was all in my head." Mark pulled out his phone, fingers trembling, and checked the time. 7 a.m. The last ride on his taxi app was still displayed. Completed trip, Riverside Cemetery. He had reached the destination. But when? His breath hitched. He clearly remembered the man instructing him to drive to the cemetery. But now, looking around, he saw no sign of its iron gates or towering headstones. Instead, he was on a desolate road, flanked by thick trees on either side, shrouded in dense fog. This was not the way to Riverside Cemetery. Mark swallowed hard. There was no way he had gotten lost. His GPS had been guiding him correctly before he blacked out. So who the hell had driven the car here? His eyes flicked to the dashboard. The odometer reading had increased by 5 miles since the last time he checked. His blood ran cold. Someone else had driven his taxi while he was unconscious. But who? And more importantly, where were they now? His hands trembled as he reached for the ignition, desperate to start the car and get the hell out of there. But just as he turned the key, bang! A hand slammed against the passenger window. Mark yelped, his heart leaping into his throat. He twisted around, but there was no one there. Only a wet handprint smeared across the glass, fading as if it had just materialized out of thin air. Mark panted, sweat beading on his forehead. This time, he didn't hesitate. His foot slammed on the gas pedal, and the tires screeched as he tore down the empty road. The taxi roared forward, leaving the eerie darkness behind. But just before he turned onto the main road, his eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, and his stomach dropped. The man in the black suit, sitting in the back seat, staring at Mark with hollow, lifeless eyes. Mark let out a strangled scream, his hands jerking the wheel, causing the taxi to swerve violently. But when he whipped around, the seat was empty. No one was there, except for a crumpled piece of paper lying on the seat. Mark's breath hitched. He hadn't noticed it before. His hands shook as he picked it up. The paper was damp, old, the ink smudged as if it had been written decades ago. There was only one sentence scrawled across it. "Do not look in the mirror." Mark froze. Slowly, his gaze drifted upward, back to the rearview mirror, and his heart stopped. The reflection staring back at him was not his own. It was his. The man in the black suit, smiling. Chapter 3. The reflection that wasn't his. Mark's breath caught in his throat. The man in the black suit, his hollow, lifeless eyes and twisted smile, was staring at him from the rearview mirror. But he wasn't in the back seat. He was only in the mirror. Mark's pulse pounded in his ears as his mind scrambled to make sense of what he was seeing. His own reflection was gone, replaced by that thing. This can't be real. This is just exhaustion. Slowly, he turned around, expecting, hoping, to find the back seat empty. And it was. No one was there. He let out a shaky breath and turned back to the mirror. The man was still there. A cold, creeping horror spread through Mark's body. He lifted a trembling hand to touch his face, and the reflection didn't move. Mark's entire body went rigid. That was when the figure in the mirror spoke. "You shouldn't have taken that ride, Mark." The voice was a whisper, a breath of air that slithered into his ears. Mark's stomach twisted. His fingers gripped the steering wheel so tightly, his knuckles turned white. "Who are you?" he croaked, barely recognizing his own voice. The figure in the mirror tilted its head, its smile never fading. "You know who I am." Mark's head shook violently. No, I don't." The man in the mirror chuckled, a soft, chilling sound. "You drove me here, Mark, and now you belong to the road." Mark's hands were ice cold. His entire body screamed at him to run, to do something, but he was frozen in place. Then, the lights inside the taxi flickered. A deep, guttural sound filled the car, vibrating through the dashboard. The engine stuttered, the headlights dimming. The air turned heavy, suffocating. Then came the whispers. Low, unintelligible voices slithered into Mark's ears, surrounding him. Something was inside the car with him. Mark's breath hitched. He clenched his jaw, forcing himself to move. With a shaky hand, he grabbed the rearview mirror, ripping it from its place and throwing it onto the floor. The whispers stopped. The air became still. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Mark sat there, his chest heaving. His entire body trembled as he stared at the shattered mirror on the floor. And then, a tap on the window. Mark's head snapped up. A woman stood outside the taxi, drenched from the rain. Her pale face was partially obscured by wet strands of hair, her eyes wide and filled with something almost like recognition. Mark hesitated before rolling the window down an inch. "Can I help you?" The woman stared at him. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "You need to leave. Now." Mark frowned. "What are you talking about?" The woman shuddered, glancing over her shoulder. "This road, it's not supposed to exist. He's keeping you here." Mark's blood turned to ice. "Who?" he whispered. The woman locked eyes with him. "The passenger," she said. A chill ran down Mark's spine. Before he could respond, she reached into her pocket, pulling out a small, crumpled photograph. She handed it to him through the gap in the window. Mark took it with shaking hands. The moment he saw what was in the photo, his stomach dropped. It was a grainy black and white image, a taxi parked in front of an old building. His taxi. and standing beside it was the man in the black suit. Only this photo looked like it was taken decades ago. At the bottom of the picture, there was a date scribbled in ink. March 7th, 1953. Mark's heart nearly stopped. That was over 70 years ago. His hands clenched around the photograph as a terrible realization washed over him. The passenger he had picked up was never supposed to be in this time. And now, somehow, neither was he. Chapter 4. The vanishing truth. The engine hummed quietly as Michael sat in his parked taxi, gripping the steering wheel with white-knuckled hands. The city lights flickered outside, distorted through the raindrops streaking down the windshield. His heart was still racing from the events of the past night. Ethan was gone, vanished into thin air. The address he had given, an old abandoned apartment complex, was a dead end. And the CCTV footage, it showed Michael alone in the car, speaking to himself like a madman. Had he imagined the whole thing? Was he losing his mind? No, he refused to believe that. The memory of Ethan sitting in his back seat, his eerie presence, his cryptic words, it was all too real. Michael reached for his phone and scrolled through the news articles once again. Ethan Caldwell, missing since 2003. His face stared back at him from a grainy photograph. It was him, the same man who had been in his taxi last night. A cold shiver ran down his spine. He needed answers. Michael pulled up outside the police station, rain pelting against his car roof. He hesitated before stepping out, gripping the old newspaper clipping in his pocket. Inside, the station was brightly lit, but it didn't make him feel any safer. The walls were lined with missing person posters, their faded faces staring back at him like ghosts. He approached the front desk. A weary-looking officer barely glanced up from his paperwork. "I'm here about a missing person case," Michael said, his voice unsteady. "Which case?" the officer asked, not looking up. Michael hesitated. "Ethan Caldwell." That got his attention. The officer's pen stopped mid-air. He slowly lifted his gaze, studying Michael with narrowed eyes. "That's impossible," the officer muttered. "Why?" Michael asked, his pulse quickening. The officer sighed and leaned forward. "Because Ethan Caldwell was found dead 20 years ago." Michael felt the blood drain from his face. "That's not possible. He was in my taxi last night." The officer frowned. "Sir, I don't know what kind of joke this is, but Ethan Caldwell's remains were found in a river. The case was closed years ago." Michael shook his head violently. "No, he was alive. He spoke to me. He told me to take him home." The officer's expression darkened. He reached under the desk and pulled out a thick case file. Flipping through the pages, he turned the folder around, showing Michael a series of crime scene photos. Michael's stomach twisted. The images showed a waterlogged body, barely recognizable, its features distorted by decay. But the clothes, the watch on his wrist, it was the same man. Ethan Caldwell had been dead for 2 decades. Then who or what had been in his taxi last night? Michael stumbled out of the station, his head spinning. The cold night air did nothing to clear his thoughts. This wasn't just a simple case of mistaken identity. Ethan's ghost, his presence, was real, and he had chosen Michael for a reason. But why? Michael pulled out his phone and redialed the last call from last night, the mysterious number Ethan had given him. It rang. His breath caught in his throat. Someone picked up. "Hello?" The voice on the other end was distorted, crackling with static. Michael swallowed hard. "Who are you? What do you want from me?" A long pause. Then, in a whisper, the voice said, "Come back to where it all ended." Click. The line went dead. Michael stared at his phone, his hands trembling. He already knew what that meant. The river. Where? Ethan's body was found, and if he wanted answers, he had to go there. Chapter 5. The Final Ride. The city was eerily quiet that night. The usual sounds of honking horns and distant sirens were absent, as if the entire metropolis had taken a collective breath, waiting for something unseen. Ethan gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white, his breath uneven. The air inside his taxi was suffocating, thick with an unnatural presence. The passenger's voice, low, distorted, inhuman, echoed in his mind. "Drive, Ethan. It's time to go home." He wanted to scream, but his throat locked up. The rearview mirror showed nothing, just the empty back seat, yet he could feel something there. His instincts screamed at him to abandon the car, to run, but he couldn't move. The street lights flickered as he turned onto an unfamiliar road. He hadn't driven this way before, yet his hands moved the wheel as if guided by an unseen force. The GPS screen glitched violently, flashing strange symbols before settling on a single word: final destination. His breath hitched. No, this isn't real. But the moment he tried to turn the car around, the wheel locked. The gas pedal pressed down on its own. The taxi accelerated, speeding through the empty streets. Ethan's hand shook as he fought the wheel, but it wouldn't budge. The city around him blurred, the buildings warping, twisting into grotesque, distorted shapes. His ears rang with whispers. "You left me, Ethan. You forgot me." The voice was familiar, too familiar. His pulse pounded as his mind raced. Who was speaking? Why did it sound like? Then he remembered. 10 years ago, a different night, a different ride. Ethan had picked up a woman dressed in a red dress, her eyes filled with sorrow. She had requested to be taken to the old bridge outside of town. He had driven her there. She had stepped out, turned to him with a sad smile and whispered, "Goodbye." Then she jumped. The memory hit him like a train. His hands trembled on the wheel. No, it can't be her. But it was. The whispers grew into a scream. The temperature in the car dropped. The seat behind him creaked. Ethan didn't dare look. The car hurtled forward, the cityscape fading into darkness. The street lights turned into glowing red eyes, watching, judging. His reflection in the windshield wasn't his own. It was hers, the woman in red. Her hollow eyes met his, her mouth twisted into a ghostly smile. "You never stopped the car, Ethan. You let me die." Tears streamed down his face. "I didn't know. I didn't mean." Her laughter echoed, cold and broken. "But now, you will." The car veered off the road. Ethan slammed the brakes. Nothing. The tires screeched. The world spun. The bridge appeared ahead. The same bridge. His breath caught in his throat. He was going too fast. He was going to crash. No. The taxi plunged through the rusted railing. For a moment, everything stopped. Weightless, silent. Then, impact, darkness. The next morning, the city woke to a strange sight. A taxi sat parked outside a long abandoned bridge, its engine idling. The driver was slumped over the wheel, eyes wide open, but he wasn't breathing. No one saw the shadow in the back seat. No one heard the soft whisper, "One more ride, Ethan. Just one more." And as the taxi pulled away on its own, disappearing into the morning mist, Ethan was never seen again.